The day's last golden rays slipped beneath the horizon as twilight settled over Twin Reed's Marsh. A humid hush lay heavy on the water, broken only by the faint susurrus of wind through willow and cypress. Dragonflies darted like living sparks across the glassy surface, and clusters of fireflies emerged, their phosphorescent glimmers dancing among the cattails. Mist curled low in sheltered channels, cloaking the tangle of roots and vines in a shifting veil of silver. Beneath the bowing fronds of a centuries-old bald cypress, Seraphina, a venerable soft-shell turtle, lay half-submerged in the shallow mud. Her leathery shell, mottled with peeling flecks of brown and olive, blended seamlessly with the silt around her. For years she had remained silent, a patient sentinel content to listen to the swamp's whispered history. Tonight, however, Seraphina sensed a tremor beneath her plastron, a subtle vibration that seemed to pulse in time with the marsh's breath. It was as if the reeds themselves awaited a signal, a note long dormant. Carefully, she extended her neck and probed the water with her nostrils, inhaling the heady mix of decaying leaves, rich peat, and damp earth. Above her, tangled vines dripped with dew, and the hollow croaks of distant bullfrogs resonated like slow drums. The usual chorus of crickets and toads had tapered into uneasy silence, heightening Seraphina's awareness of something stirring just beyond sight. Somewhere in these shadowed waterways lay an ancient shrine, a moss-covered altar carved by unknown hands, said to cradle the marsh's forgotten songs. Seraphina rose, her broad, paddle-shaped limbs stirring small clouds of silt as she slipped out of her muddy burrow. Each deliberate step brought her closer to the water's edge, where lily pads floated like lanterns in the gathering gloom. Reeds bowed to let her pass, and tiny fish darted away in jittery flurries. The turtle's dark eyes, rimmed with a hint of jade, glowed with quiet purpose. Tonight, she felt, was the night to break centuries of stillness, to awaken a song that could echo through every cattail stalk and reed-lined bank. As the sky deepened to indigo and a lone owl called overhead, Seraphina slipped fully into the marsh's embrace. The water closed softly around her shell, inviting and cool, and she sensed the hidden currents shift beneath her. In that pregnant stillness, she prepared to lift her throat pouch and release the first note of a secret serenade. A song that would bridge the silence of ages and call forth the lost legends buried deep within Twin Reed's Marsh. The water around. Seraphina's broad shell felt cool against her mottled plastron as she glided away from the cypress root where she had lingered. Each stroke of her paddle-like limbs sent ripples fanning outward, distorting the reflections of fiery sunset clouds overhead. Dragonflies trailed her wake, their iridescent wings catching the last glints of day, while clusters of tadpoles darted through the shallows as if stirred by an unseen current. A hushed expectancy hung in the air. The usual symphony of frogs and insects had fallen silent, leaving a cathedral's stillness in its place. Seraphina paused beneath an arched canopy of willow branches, muddy tendrils brushing her leathery head. She dipped her nostrils into the water, drawing in the marsh's layered scents, the sweetness of decaying lotus petals, the tang of brackish water mingled with the heavy musk of peat, and something else, an ancient note, like the faintest echo of a distant bell. Her heart beat steadily, each pulse synchronized with an undercurrent that seemed to flow not just through water, but through time itself. She felt the breeze shift, carrying the soft rustle of reeds closing ranks behind her, as though the marsh was guiding her forward. Pushing onward, she navigated a narrow channel where floating mats of duckweed formed a living bridge overhead. Light filtered through in mottled patches, illuminating submerged roots that twisted like knotted ropes. Fish silhouettes flitted beneath her, startled by her approach and scattering like living confetti. On the banks, soft-shell turtles younger than Seraphina bobbed their heads in curiosity before retreating into the mud. Even the normally bold marsh rabbits remained motionless, ears flat, watching her with wide, glimmering eyes. At the channel's end, Serafina surfaced beside a fallen cedar log, gnarled by time. She rested her flippers upon its slick surface, feeling a faint vibration, a whisper of something buried just beneath the silt. According to the old tales passed down by her grandmother, the Marsh's heart lay here, an ancient stone altar carved with looping glyphs that chronicled the bond between land, water, and sky. No living creature had sung its verses for countless generations. The runes had grown dark with moss, and the stories had slipped into oblivion. But the current humming beneath her shell told Serafina that the shrine awaited her voice. Gathering her resolve, she turned her gaze toward the murky depths where phosphorescent algae glowed in ghostly green swirls, a subtle pathway marking the altar's submerged edge. The water's surface was broken by the occasional drip of dew from overhead vines, as if droplets themselves were hesitant notes falling into silence. With a slow exhalation, Serafina inhaled the humid air once more, nostrils flaring, and began to wade toward the hidden shrine. Every fiber of her being thrummed with anticipation, for she knew that only her song could awaken the Marsh's forgotten legacy, and that the whispers beneath the reeds were calling her to speak them aloud. Serafina followed the faint glow of phosphorescent algae deeper into the Marsh's labyrinthine channels. Each breath she drew carried the humid perfume of decaying lotus petals and damp earth, and each paddle stroke stirred a swirl of silty brown beneath her broad shell. As she rounded a bend framed by trailing Spanish moss, the water widened into a shallow basin cradled by ancient cypress knees. There, half submerged in the hush of the marsh, stood the forgotten shrine. At first glance, it resembled a low dais of mottled gray stone, its surface mottled with lacy tendrils of moss and lacquered by centuries of rain. Water lilies clung to its edges, their pale pink petals brushing the stone in a delicate embrace. Vines crept over one side, curling around a carved relief so worn that the original shapes were nearly lost. Yet beneath the moss's fringe, Serafina could make out looping glyphs, spirals and interlocking arcs that pulsed with a slow, internal rhythm, as if awaiting a voice to awaken them. She slid forward until her flippers pressed against the shrine's rim, feeling the rock's cool firmness beneath her scutes. Tiny snails clustered in the nooks of the carvings, their translucent shells catching stray moonlight like shards of glass. A lone crayfish slipped from a crevice and scuttled into the muck, sending a shiver through the water that echoed in Serafina's own plastron. Above, willow branches bowed lower, their leaves whispering in the breeze, nature's audience falling silent in reverence. With deliberate care, Serafina extended her neck and rested her beak-like mouth against the heart of the shrine. The glyphs here were deepest, a concentric circle surrounded by radiating lines. She traced each groove with her rough tongue, and a barely perceptible hum thrummed through the stone, vibrating up her throat. It was the same resonance she'd felt beneath her shell back at the cypress root, a promise of dormant power trapped within these glyphs, yearning for release. In the hush, memories of her grandmother's stories surfaced. Tales of soft-shell turtles who once sang at this very altar, their voices weaving storms to sleep and guiding lost travelers through moonlit marshes. Those ancestors had passed their song into the stone itself, entrusting its magic to the water and reeds, until time's currents eroded both memory and melody. Now the shrine lay forgotten, its magic sealed in the runes until a true voice dared to call it forth. Serafina inhaled slowly, filling her lungs with the marsh's charged air. Her throat pouch felt tight and tremulous, like a drumskin stretched too long. Around her, the marsh held its breath. A distant bullfrog ceased its call. The fireflies paused mid-dance. Even the cypress leaves stilled in mid-rustle. Serafina straightened her posture, her dark eyes fixed on the carvings that glimmered faintly beneath the algae light. For a heartbeat, the world lay suspended between past and future. Then Serafina pressed her throat pouch once more against the cool stone, steeling herself. Every sense attuned, she prepared to lift her first note, a single fragile spark destined to ignite the ancient music of Twin Reed's Marsh. Seraphina drew a deep, measured breath, letting the misty night air fill her lungs. Beneath her, the carved glyphs trembled with anticipation as the pulsing hum of the shrine's runes resonated through the silt. Around her, the stillness was absolute. No crickets chirp, no frogs croak, only the soft drip of dew from willow branches. With one final pause, she released her silent turtle song. At first, it was but a whisper, a quavering note that quivered through her throat pouch like a trembling leaf in the wind. The sound spilled onto the altar's stone surface and shivered through the carvings, setting each concentric groove aglow with phosphorescent light. Seraphina's head lifted, eyes half closed, as she sustained the note, delicate and pure, its clarity cutting through centuries of silence. As her confidence grew, the melody unfurled in richer, layered tones, undulating waves that rose and fell in gentle crescendos. The accompaniment came not from instruments, but from the marsh itself. Water lilies trembled in harmony, their petals vibrating in time with Seraphina's chant. Reeds bowed and swayed, creating a rustling counter-rhythm. Even the algae beneath the water's surface pulsed in bioluminescent response, painting the basin with emerald ripples. Wildlife emerged from the shadows drawn by the otherworldly music. A pair of great blue herons landed softly on adjacent logs, necks curved inquisitively as they cocked their heads to listen. Frogs peered from lily pads, their bulbous eyes reflecting the shimmer of Seraphina's song. A curious otter slipped quietly beside her, whiskers twitching, before settling to watch the spectacle. Even the normally reticent alligators drifted close, heads raised above the waterline in solemn attention. With each sustained note, Seraphina felt the heartbeat of the marsh align with her own, an ancient rhythm that had lain dormant beneath layers of neglect and time. The shrine's moss-covered runes glowed brighter. The algae's glow deepened to sapphire, and the water's surface itself shimmered with living light. The melody climbed to its zenith in a soaring trill that seemed to lift the night sky, scattering droplets of dew like stardust in the lantern glow of fireflies. Then, as softly as it began, the song decrescendoed to a final, resonant chord that vibrated through stone, water, and air alike. The echo lingered, a spectral afterglow that rippled outward into every tributary and hidden pool. For a heartbeat, all was stillness once more. Then the marsh exhaled in collective accord. A single bullfrog broke the silence with a low, rumbling croak, and the night chorus gradually resumed. Crickets resumed their trill, toads their plop-plop replies, and cicadas their lazy drone. But something fundamental had shifted. The water shone with renewed clarity. The air felt charged with possibility, and every creature, winged, finned, or scaled, carried in its bones the resonance of Seraphina's song. As she drifted away from the altar, Seraphina felt the weight of centuries lift from her throat pouch. She had given voice to the marsh's hidden heart, and in turn, awakened a chorus of ancient spirits. Behind her, the forgotten shrine lay luminous beneath floating lotus blooms, its runes freshly alive, ready to preserve the melodies she had set free. In that hush of aftermath, Seraphina knew the secret serenade would never again be silenced, and that Twin Reed's Marsh would carry its song in ripples of light and life for all the nights to come. As the final notes of Seraphina's song tremble into silence, the marsh holds its breath for a heartbeat. Then something stirs beneath the alabaster glow of the forgotten shrine. At first, it is only a low rumble, as though distant thunder murmurs from the silt. The water around Seraphina's broad shell shivers in concentric rings, and the phosphorescent algae pulse in response, transforming from emerald to sapphire and back again in mesmerizing waves. From the depths of the shrine's submerged base, spectral voices bubble upward, flute-like whistles that dance upon the night air, joined by the soft, drum-like thumps of unseen footsteps. Seraphina watches, awe coursing through her ancient bones, as shapes rise from the water's mirror. Translucent turtles glide alongside her, their shells patterned with the same looping glyphs she beheld on the altar. Great herons emerge in misty silhouette, beaks lifted as if recalling an age-old invocation. Otters slip onto the stone dais, bodies rippling with liquid light. Each spirit bears the markings of the shrine's runes, spirals carved into phantom flesh that glow with a gentle blue luminescence. The marsh creatures fall silent. Bullfrogs cease their deep croaks. Cicadas fold their wings. Even the cricket's trills fade into an expectant hush. In that stillness, the ghosts begin their ceremony. With reverent grace, they trace the contours of the altar in a slow, swirling procession. The spectral turtles chant in low, sonorous tones, an incantation of storms quelled and floods diverted, of seasons harmonized between land and water. The herons add their clarion notes, weaving tales of travelers guided through moonlit waterways. The otters drum the stone surface with gentle taps, echoing the heartbeat of the marsh itself. Serafina closes her eyes and feels the currents of magic weave through her shell, imprinting her memory with each whispered lesson. How her ancestors stilled tempests with a single sustained note. How they tempered the floodwaters by calling forth hidden channels. How they forged bonds of trust between swamp spirits and human guardians. The wisdom of generations flows into her, as tangible as the cool night air against her leathery throat. When the ceremony reaches its zenith, the spirits rise in unison, forming a circle of light around the altar. Their final chord resonates like a benediction, a celestial harmony that ripples through every reed and root. Then, as softly as they appeared, they dissolve into the mist, leaving behind only the gentle hum of still-awakening waters. The shrine's runes glow one last time before settling into a warm, steady luminescence, and the algae's light returns to a soft, pulsing breath. Serafina opens her eyes, blinking against the afterglow, and realizes that the marsh's lost legends have been woven back into the living world. Around her, Twin Reeds Marsh thrums with renewed vitality, carrying in every ripple and rustle the echoes of the deep, and a promise that its secret serenade will forever safeguard the balance between land, water, and all who call it home. When the first pale fingers of dawn crept over the cypress treetops, Twin Reeds Marsh stirred with a freshness it hadn't known for centuries. Serafina surfaced from her moss-lined hollow, the water cool against her mottled plastron as she paddled toward open channels now shimmering with crystalline clarity. Where once the basin had lain murky and still, sunlight danced on transparent ripples, revealing darting minnows and clams nestled in sandy beds. Along the lily-draped banks, creatures of every stripe emerged eager and unhesitant. A family of river otters tumbled playfully in the shallows, their sleek bodies glistening as they chased one another through floating petal rafts. Snapping turtles basked on sun-warmed logs, limbs splayed in contentment, while spring peepers rang out in sweet, trilling bursts as though celebrating a long-lost festival. High above, great blue herons took flight in lazy circles, their mirrored reflections trailing perfect silhouettes across the polished surface. Even the normally reclusive marsh deer ventured to the water's edge, delicate hooves soft on the sodden ground as they dipped their muzzles to drink. News of the marsh's transformation spread quickly to the nearby settlement of Willow's End. At the boat dock, fishermen unreeled nets to find them brimming with crabs and perch proportioned far larger than any haul of previous seasons. Mrs. Calder, whose garden bordered the marshland, discovered her tomato vines now heavy with fruit, vibrant red globes that ripened overnight. Children skipped along the raised boardwalk at midday, entranced by the shimmering water beneath their feet, and pointed excitedly at schools of brightly colored minnows schooling in the shallows. That evening, as the sky blushed rose and lavender, a gentle breeze carried the soft echo of Serafina's melody back through the reeds, an almost imperceptible susurration that stirred memory in every heartbeat. Villagers paused in the fading light, closing their eyes to catch its haunting sweetness. The marsh, once silent and brooding, had awoken to its ancient purpose, to nourish, to guide, and to sing. And at its heart, the silent turtle's song lived on in every ripple and leaf, ensuring Twin Reeds Marsh would thrive as a living legend for generations to come. Months passed, and each season brought fresh marvels to Twin Reeds Marsh. Emerald shoots of sedge and cattail in spring, riotous blooms of water lilies in summer, fiery foliage along the banks in autumn, and frost-laced reeds in winter. Yet no transformation was as profound as the one ignited by Seraphina's long, dormant song. Where once the marsh had lurked at the edge of oblivion, it now pulsed with life, its balance renewed by the serenade that bridged past and present. As twilight settled on midsummer evenings, Seraphina resumed her pilgrimage to the forgotten shrine. The soft-shell turtle glided through crystalline channels, now clear enough to glimpse the smooth stones beneath, and paused beneath the bowed willows. There, she raised her throat pouch in a gentle trill that rippled across the water. Dragonflies dipped their wings in time to the melody, and fireflies swarmed like living stars, framing her in a halo of phosphorescent light. Each note she released rekindled the shrine's runes, their glow mirrored in the steady bioluminescence of algae beds. The marsh's renewed energy attracted creatures from every corner of the wetlands. Otters performed playful dances in the shallows, tossing fish like spinning discs. Herons and egrets roosted in harmony on moss-hung branches. Even the alligators basked contentedly along the muddy banks, their scales gleaming bronze in the moonlight. Fish populations swelled so dramatically that osprey nests flourished atop the tallest cypress, and muskrat lodges multiplied where fresh shoots sprouted at the water's edge. Word of the marsh's renaissance reached Willow's End, and respectful visitors tread the boardwalk in hushed wonder. Guided by lantern light, they paused to leave small offerings, driftwood carvings, hand-woven reed bracelets, and bowls of riverwort tea at the foot of the shrine. Local children learned to hush their chatter and listen for Seraphina's song, believing that a true guardian would hear their wishes and guide them safely home. At the close of her nightly serenade, Seraphina often lingered beside the altar, feeling the rune's warmth through her chestnut shell. In her dreams, she heard faint echoes of ancestral voices, ancient turtle guardians who murmured thanks and imparted new teachings, how to channel moonlight through reeds to soothe restless waters, how to call migrating birds safely across storm-tossed skies, how to weave harmony among all denizens of the swamp. Over the years, her melody became woven into the marsh's very essence. The water itself seemed to murmur her refrain as it flowed, and the wind through the cattails carried her chorus beyond the fen. Travelers who strayed too close to the swamp's edges found themselves calmed, their anxieties of towns and toils slipping away as they inhaled the night air scented with lotus and peat. And so Seraphina's legacy endured, not simply as an echo of a single song, but as the living, breathing spirit of Twin Reeds Marsh. Through her sustained vigilance and gentle voice, the silent turtle had restored the lost legends to both land and heart, and ensured that the secret serenade would guide marsh and traveler alike for all the nights to come.